So in the few minutes that we've left, and after this incredibly packed couple of days, and so much that we've heard, and it's going to take some time to think about everything and distill everything. But we wanted to take a few moments for wrap-up comments. And if there's anybody has any closing comments or ideally conclusions that you would like to share with us, or proposals for moving forward, we would love to hear from you. I think we have a couple of people over here who would like to begin. All right, please.
Thank you, Gareth. Thank you all for an amazing day and a half. If you don't know me, I'm Gary Hilderbrand, the Department Chair of Landscape Architecture here at GSD. And I have been working with Gareth very closely in planning this for a long time. I was reflecting on, when we came up with futurities, and it kind of worked. I just have a couple of things I'm going to really remember. One is it K15, Finzi? K15, is that the?
Unit 15. Unit
15X.
15X. I am just super impressed with that as a curriculum. I think my mic has dropped. No? Maybe not. There, it's back. And I won't elaborate, but the trajectory going from the greats to the important local, it's fantastic. Losing coloniality is the hard project. I thought that was really something. It wasn't easy to become independent, but it's far harder to lose coloniality. 3, thank you, Jala, for a beautiful formation. Landscape is a way of beholding people, beholding place, beholding more than human. A way of beholding. This is really richly beautiful, and it leads me to the point that I want to make as a closer for myself. There are many Africas, and there are many landscapes, and there are many people involved in making landscapes. Now, in the late 19th century in the US, I think we faced very similar problems to those that are being faced in African cities. Massive growth, displacement toward the city, removal from the sources of food, the need to find ways to transport food, all kinds of labor issues, and ultimately the need for reform of the cities through the medium of landscape occurred here in the 19th century. And that reform movement, which I will hold to, became landscape architecture as a professionalized culture in the US. Gareth and I have talked a bit in the last year over whether professionalization is the right thing for African landscape architecture. And I'm not going to make a profound thing here, but what we saw in a day and a half is that, well, let me say this other thing first. Largely because of the intersection of American law and I would say late capitalism, or now maybe you would say neoliberal capitalism, the professional landscape architect is deeply involved in the protection of the health, safety, and welfare of people. And it is in that an exclusivity. It is an exclusive profession, but there are many other people who are involved in making landscapes, and we tend to bracket them off. But what I heard this morning especially, but no, what we saw in the last couple of days is that there are many kinds of people who are making landscapes that are important, culturally important, and important for so many reasons. I mean, we saw an artist who makes landscapes, right? Spiritual practitioners who make or keep landscapes. Educators in many disciplines, gardeners, conservationists, curators. Now, in the naming of the Lebanese association, it seems to me you started to have an open definition. You didn't bracket off all those categories or those groups that I just mentioned. My hope for the futurity of African landscape architecture would be that you maintain that idea of open and inclusive participation by everyone who makes landscapes or cares for them, stewards them, and that would be a different future than the one that is preordained in the United States. I'll end there. Thanks.
Cheers. It's a hot table.
Please.
No, thank you. And I think because I moderated the first session, there's a way in which I could bring forth in full circle. And it really comes from being interested as a historian, so I'm not a designer, as a historian, the questions we ask. And I guess my takeaway is just how important it is to ask different questions. I'm thinking of a piece by Rebecca Solnit in 2018, 20 million missing storytellers. It's actually about the people who can't vote. But her point was, we're not telling enough stories to be able to imagine a different future. And I would argue that that behooves us to think about the stories that we're telling and how do we tell a broader set of stories so that we can imagine something different in the future, because I think the stories we've told us have not gotten us all the places that we might want to be. Other things that I think were really important, focus on land, land studies, land as text, land as archive, land as medium, that all needed to build a world for all of us, and I'm thinking of the human and the more than human, to thrive. The potential spirituality, something I think particularly in this country we're a little nervous about, and I think that's really important, of indigeneity and of politics. This is a moment where I was really thrilled to hear us remember that politics really matter. The potential of commons and commoning, something that I think, again, we can tell very different stories about if we really think carefully. And particularly what I heard a lot was what it means to design in transition and to design with change in mind, not design for the status quo, not design to hold on and to conserve, but to design for change. Losing coloniality, I absolutely. But I guess I would just end that I still think that a future different from what we know takes incredible imagination, and what we need to do is think about the stories that we're telling and the broader stories we engage, and that will lead to different questions, which will lead to different outcomes in thinking. And I'll leave it. And just a thank you to everybody.
Thank you, Thaïsa and Gary, for your beautiful comments. Would anybody else like to share some thoughts, some closing thoughts for the future of the field? You can either come or it's better if you come.
Thank you, Gary and colleagues, for this very special occasion. I just wanted to make a slight connection of Harvard and myself. About 5, 6 years ago, a friend of mine came visiting here. And she was just visiting, but she bought me a T-shirt. Said Harvard University. I've been wearing that religiously until it's threadbare. But this morning I sent my wife my pictures. I said, I'm here. I'm here. And so that's really great to have been part of this. Thank you, Gareth. I think a couple of things to think about the future. One of the moments that really touched me was when there was, before we start any session, we acknowledge the first peoples. I think that's really important. And for me, to see it in future would be to see if in the next 10 years there will be students and staff from the first people's groups of students being part of staff here. Then I think we will have achieved real transformation. And I say this because of where I come from. I didn't show you a picture of my friends, my young friends. I think I'm the oldest guy in 15X since I started it. But I've trained young academics. Some of them have even, I always say 15X is the best unit because it has given birth to other units within the establishment. And I think that's, for me, that was a measure of success. And I could happily, at any time, walk away. I know that there will be a legacy of transformation. And it is cultural groupings that I've trained. So I think that I hold that very dear as important for the future of landscape architects. The richer the diversity, the more success, I think, as a profession we're going to be. Landscape architecture, I think, is a very difficult profession because of the way it's perceived by other professionals. We really need to have our foot. I raised the question about politics because it's the politicians that make the decision to build the bus rapid transport. They make the decision and they make the economic deal with a financier from whatever institution. They may come from the West, East, but they come and make a plan, and the landscape architects are not sitting at the table. And therefore the program for the future, if landscape architects are not sitting there, is stymied. We won't contribute. The last point I think I want to make is on behalf of Institute of Landscape Architects and IFLA, Graham and Kerry. In September, we hold our IFLA Africa and ILASA, Institute of South Africa Landscape. We hold it in September. It's quite far, yes. It's only 17 hours. But if you do have the chance, we have framed a lovely topic, and we said it's reframing landscape architecture. And we would like to extend to you, even if it is online, I think it is possible. Please just join us and let's continue this dialogue. I said the last, but I won't, because the other main point is that we must produce this session, the last 2 days, as a product to be consumed, whether as a written document or something for the public. Gareth, I think for me that would really be the high point that we can. I'm traditional. I don't like swiping. I like a book or journal. So if we can do that, I'll really like it. Asante sana. Thank you very much. Kielewa.
Thank you, Finzi. I mean, I can't agree with you more. You know, it's only through the production of knowledge, and in sharing that knowledge that we can really diversify the field, right? So I think that's an essential aspect of our work as academics, to effectively share our knowledge. But do we have any other?
If you do this, it'll mute it.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So do we have any other remarks? I have a couple of thoughts I would like to share. Well, in the blatant act of self-promotion, I just received this rushed from the University of Virginia Press, rushed a copy to Cambridge, so I would show it to everyone. So it's a book on landscape fieldwork, but the subtitle is How Engaging the World Can Change Design. And, you know, I think I would like to leave this maybe as a parting thought, because I think we all have a responsibility. I covered it, yeah. I think we all have a responsibility to help to diversify the field. And, you know, I think one of the biggest problems in the world today is a fear of difference. And the best way we can overcome a fear of difference is to expose our students to difference. And when we don't have archives to work with, then the landscape itself is our archive, and we have to learn to read that archive and to teach others how to read that archive of the landscape and to share it with them. I visited the Oshun Sacred Grove for the first time, I think, about 7 or 8 years ago. And Princess Adedoyin was an amazing host, and so kind, and so peaceful. And so is the grove, and so is Oshun. And what I learned from that experience was that this sacred grove was a much more successful public space than many of the other spaces that were being built around it. And I think there's so much that we can learn by being exposed to difference. And I would like to invite Princess Adedoyin just to say a few words to close the event.
Good evening, everyone. It's been a great pleasure to have these foods for thought, because everything being said is so educative, and I pray that it will not go from one side of the here and go out from the other side, that it will go to the mind and it will be of useful thing for the humanity. This afternoon, when we went for official reception, and they asked me about the particular place here that I really love, but I chose the fountain part with the rocks.
The Tanner Fountain.
Yeah, that with that, for the first time, I really appreciate that. We have it, I will say it in Yoruba, because it's in Ifa, that Ona Pakiti, Ona Be Omi Lori, Ome Pakiti, Ome Be Ona Lori, Ìpàdé omi àtọ̀nà, wọ́n pínra wọn sí mẹ́rin, àwọn ló dá fún òyìgíyigì tí í ṣe ọ̀tánú omi. Ǹjẹ́ gbogbo wa, àwa dòyìgíyigì, a ò kú, òyìgíyigì, Otaumi. African landscape architecture, Odo Yigi Yigi, Kokuma, Oyigi Yigi, Otaumi. The rocks inside water never died. So with that, I use that, that the African landscape architectures will remain the rock underwater. It will not die. So is this program, and I wish everyone safe travels back home. Adelebare, Arinakore, Akoyaibi. Thank you very much. Long live African landscape architectures. Long live everyone. Long live the universe. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I wish you safe travels back home. And may our path be cool as cold water of ocean. Ore ye ye, ore ye ye, ore ye ye ocean. Thank you.